Hey everyone, I think I'll call this video Violent Extremism, Cause and Effect. Because as you're probably aware at this point in time, whether they're talking about the Islamicists or the Islam extremists or what they perceive as the far right or the alt-right, those right-wing extremists. Although don't you ever question why they never say or refer to leftist extremists? Oh, that's for a reason. And that reason is because most of the people that are your thought leaders or opinion makers these days come from the left side of the political spectrum. So of course they don't want to hold up a mirror or point to anyone that they associate with and suggest they're extremists in any way. Like I say, whether it's the so-called far-right extremists or the Islam extremists, these things didn't just pop out of nowhere, right? They didn't just appear magically from a puff of smoke. If you actually sat down and did the actual hard work, put in the investigative effort and the research and look through the history, you would find out fairly quickly, well, it might take you a little bit of time, but eventually you'll come to the same logical conclusion. It's governments, particularly authoritarian interventionist governments and central planned governments. Those are based and entrenched upon collectivism, which practically represents most Western democracies today. And it is the foreign policy of authoritarians in the West, those governments, not the people. That's the thing, folks. Keep in mind, you're talking about those in power or who have positions of so-called authority that dictates and controls policy. In regards to foreign policy, those are the people in government. Now, you can hold to account the voters that chose to support these authoritarian regimes or political parties. But yes, it is a lot of the Islamist extremists, it is a direct result and a consequence of foreign intervention into a lot of conflicts in the Middle East. Or actually, a direct consequence of foreign interventions is what caused a ramp up of some of those Middle Eastern conflicts. I highly doubt the Syrian war, the civil conflict they were having over there, would have lasted nearly as long if it wasn't for the fact of Western governments and their interventionist policies and arming a lot of the militant groups, a lot of these Islamist militant groups, because they were like, once again, is my enemy or your enemy is my friend, or all that bullshit. So while Western powers were arming some of these Islamist extremist groups as a means to overthrow Assad, well, as we've seen in many times in the past, just like the Mujahideen that were armed by the Americans, well, the militants at some point in time, they'll turn back and pivot and focus on you. This is called blowback. Ron Paul talked about this stuff many times, and a lot of you need to get on board, because it's not just Ron Paul, but even the FBI and the CIA, a lot of these groups know full well what the reason is. Foreign policy plays a huge role in a lot of this Islam extremism that's now being brought to the West. Once again, when you're talking about borders or the fact that a lot of them, these Islamist extremists, are pouring across the borders or coming into our countries, well, how can they get here? How can they come into the country? When you have a country, you're supposed to have a government, and the government's supposed to protect your borders. So that means, once again, your government is failing you in that area, in that regard. Now, when you're talking about far right or right-wing extremists, well, that's, once again, that's a consequence, that's a reflection, and you've seen it, it only popped up subsequent to the introduction of Islam or Islamist extremists coming to the Western countries. There was no mention, you never heard any stories talking about far-right or alt-right or right-wing extremists until there was a problem with what they perceive as foreign threats or extremists from foreign countries. So, once again, not defending either, but I'm just pointing out the reality that the Islamists, they have actually some genuine reasons for why they're trying to retaliate or use violence towards the West. I'm not saying it's a right thing to do, and I definitely don't agree with it, but I can understand the reasoning behind it. Same with the right-wingers or these alt-right or far-right extremists, as those in the media try to put forth and suggest. Yeah, they're just trying to protect what they consider their homeland. They're what you would call patriots or nationalists, right? Which the reason why they're patriots or nationalists is because they were raised and educated in a system that taught them to think that way. So now for the governments that created all the mess, because that's the thing, like I say, the governments are the ones that created this mess. the political leaders, your media, thought leaders, and opinion makers, those in the education institutions, all those that represent the bureaucracy, the deep state, those are the actors that are the true culprits for all the problems that you see out there today. And to try to tell people that are just basically doing what they've been programmed to do, and to suggest that they're bad for doing what you program, or the people that, the political or thought leaders that came before you, the indoctrination that you jammed in their head, to now finger wag at them and say they shouldn't think that way after they've been taught to think that way their entire lives. Yeah, that's disgusting, folks. Like I say, I'm not defending far-right extremists, and I'm definitely not defending Islamicists or Islam extremists. But once again, I understand how this unfolded. I understand the timeline. I understand the history. And I want to focus on the true culprits, which are those in government. Those who pretend to be your authority. These are the people that are causing the true problems and the true divide, along with their media mouthpieces that lay political cover for them. Headline of the National Post: extremist groups in Alberta detailed in first of its kind report. The report found Alberta has been home to both intimate and established networks tied to al-Qaida and affiliate groups, and highly isolated cases that are connected with Assad's network wholly online. It's being reported by Johnny Wakefield, April 23rd, 2019. Alberta is home to a disproportionate number of extremist movements, including far-right groups and people traveling abroad to join armed groups such as ISIS, according to a new report billed as the first of its kind. The upcoming study, Extremism and Hate-Motivated Violence in Alberta, runs nearly 100 pages and provides a taxonomy of the province's extremist groups. It includes provincial membership, estimates for violent and potentially violent ideological movements, and assessments of whether the groups are growing or shrinking. The Organization for the Prevention of Violence, OPV, which produced the report, received a $1.2 million grant from the federal government last year as part of a plan to counter hate and violent extremism in Alberta, which has seen a rise in police-reported hate crimes. The report is poised to be made public next month. The organization also developed an intervention program to steer people away from extremist movements. OPV Executive Director John McCoy said he's unaware of any other studies that identify and quantify extremist groups in Alberta. What our research shows is that there is a diversity of threats out there related to violent extremism, and there are many different ideologies that can create this problem, said McCoy, a professor who teaches terrorism studies at the University of Alberta. So just think about it, right? Already we're hearing from people that are in predominantly universities, so probably people that would identify on the left, and the government of Alberta, which obviously this was before Kenny come to power, so Notley, NDP, right? Leftists. So of course leftists, like I say, they want to point out to other people or other groups as being the culprits or the problems, but like I say, they don't want to look in the mirror at all and suggest that anyone on their side are extremists. I would say that Rachel Notley and what she has done to Alberta, that's a real form of extremism that actually has a much larger and profound effect on the people of Alberta, and actually because of transfer wealth payments or welfare payments to the rest of Canada from the have provinces, that's going to affect the entire country. I would say that is the kind of extremism that's much more severe and has much more profound effects on the Canadian population than some fringe far-right groups or what, yellow vesters, right? Is that what you're suggesting here? Or, the one-off Islamist extremist that goes and bombs somebody or runs someone down. I'm not saying any of those things are good, but once again, who are the true extremists? Come on, folks. Who are the true extremists among us? You know damn well who the true extremists are among us are those who want to be your thought leaders and your political masters. Those are the real extremists. There are a number of ideologies where Alberta is disproportionately represented in terms of the numbers that we're producing, he said. The report relied on interviews with more than 170 law enforcement members from the RCMP and every municipal police service in Alberta. Researchers also interviewed around 120 people whose communities are impacted by hate and extremism, 50 service providers specializing in violence and at-risk youth, and 21 people previously involved with extremist movements or their loved ones. McCoy said one major conclusion is that individuals on the edges of extremist groups, often radicalized on social media, are the biggest threat. The individuals that we're seeing are really on the margins of extremist movements, he said. So anyways, like I say, these people in government, once again, they are the ones that actually create the problem. Once again, back to basics here, folks. These are the people that actually create the problem, because you didn't hear of Islamist extremism prior to intervention into the Middle East and stirring up that hornet's nest, right? You know, you never heard any of that. It was all subsequent to that. Same with far right or these right-wing extremist groups. You never heard any of that shit until the Islam extremists were pumped up by those in the media and the political propagandists. And now you're seeing those groups showing favor for the Islam extremists or sympathy in any way. So now they're seeing that these people that are considered far right, they're like, well, what's going on here? You seem to siding with external threats to my country, and now that's where these right-wingers are rising up. They're like, because, you know, obviously a right-winger is someone that's more traditionalist, more nationalist, more patriotic, more all about stand up for their family or their tribe. So of course they're going to step up and say, hey, well, since those in the media and the political class are showing favor now for some of these extremist groups and are unwilling to hold them to account in a similar manner that they're trying to do towards people, like I say, that are just doing what they've been programmed to do. And that's the thing. Even these Islamist extremists, they're just doing what they've been programmed to do through the indoctrination into their ideology, into their religion. So this is what it is. Like I say, who plants all these seeds of how people think in regards to governments or how they perceive it, how they should defend their country, or pitting groups against others, or collective groupthink, or identity politics? Like I say, it's your thought leaders, it's your political masters. And once again, they're the ones that get to sit back there, you know, write these articles or put out this political propaganda as a means to stir up division, hatred, so that they can come in and act like they're your benevolent lords and they're going to fix things. But these are the ones, like I say, problem, reaction, solution. At all three junctions, the true culprits are the ones that, like I say, are in government, that are dictating and controlling every area of your social and economic lives. These are the people that are the true culprits that are causing all these problems. Once again, once they've done so, which is why, like I say, that's why no left extremism, no Antifa, nothing referencing any of that shit. And we've seen plenty of violence from the far left. What it is collectivism versus individualism, authoritarianism versus libertarianism. That's the true divide, folks. And until people get on board to understand that fundamental reality, we're never going to break free of this kind of nonsense. Anyways, I'll post a link to this article in the description of the video below. But yeah, once again, folks, I can't stress this enough. You have to learn and understand the cause and effect. Who are the true culprits? You know, if you're trying to investigate anything, you got to get back to, well, where did this start? Like, you know, if you're investigating a fire, what the hell started the fire? Yeah, you can say after the fact, well, this got burnt down, and oh, the fire leaped across this field and burnt this other building. I mean, you can play out how all the consequence, all the damage, or all the destruction, how that take place subsequent to the initial act that sparked that fire, that started that fire. But in reality, the most important thing that you should be trying to get to, especially if you're talking about journalism or news and media outlets, is get to the meat of the bone and to the core aspect of the issue. Is what started this. Once again, big government, central planning, collectivism, authoritarianism, identity politics. That's where it all began. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.